In the grand halls of Hollywood's history, few names shimmer with the quiet intensity of Robert Redford, the man who seemed to glide through fame untouched by the noise that devoured so many others. To the public, he was the golden boy, the calm face of American cinema, a symbol of dignity and intelligence, a man who made the impossible look effortless. But behind the iconic smile and composed silence was an artist who fought invisible battles, not with scandal or self-destruction, but with the relentless weight of expectation, ego, and creative friction that comes with greatness. At 88, as he looks back, Redford no longer hides from the truth. His story isn't one of gossip or grudges, but of lessons learned in the shadows of collaboration, where genius often collides, and where even the most graceful must occasionally bleed to protect their art. His confessions pull back the curtain on a career defined not just by success, but by the subtle wars waged behind the camera, wars with men and women whose brilliance equaled his own but whose temperaments could not align with his calm pursuit of truth. With every name, every memory, there's a glimpse into what it truly means to build a legacy without losing your soul. It begins in the late 1960s, when a young Robert Redford, still shaping his identity as an actor, met Gene Hackman on the set of Downhill Racer. Two forces of nature, one all fire, the other all restraint, collided in a way that defined the project. Hackman was raw, intense, unpredictable, and brilliant in his chaos. Redford, meanwhile, believed in precision, in letting silence speak louder than rage. Their energies clashed from the first scene. Hackman wanted domination. Redford wanted balance. One day, Redford calmly said, "This isn't your movie, Gene, it's a team effort." The words weren't shouted. They were spoken with the quiet authority that would define his entire career. There was mutual respect, yes, but never friendship. They finished the film as professionals. Two men too strong to bend, too proud to break, and when it ended, they walked away in opposite directions, knowing they'd created something great, but never again wanting to share the same frame. That moment was a lesson Redford carried for life. Collaboration, even among masters, demands the humility to coexist, and not everyone can bear it. Years later came James Woods, a man Redford called brilliant but dangerous. Their paths crossed not on screen, but in conversation, a meeting meant to discuss a possible collaboration that quickly devolved into philosophical warfare. Woods, fiery and confrontational, thrived on debate while Redford preferred reflection. When Woods turned the discussion political and began attacking Redford's humanitarian views, the actor simply stood up, offered a polite smile, and walked away. Later, a producer found Redford's casting notes, where next to Woods's name were two words, "never, ever." There was no hatred in it, just the firm decision of a man who valued peace of mind more than prestige. Redford had spent his life surrounded by storms. He no longer needed another. That quiet refusal said more about his character than any argument ever could. He was not a man of vengeance. He was a man of boundaries. With Dustin Hoffman, the tension was more creative than personal, but it left a deeper mark. On the set of All the President's Men, two different philosophies of acting collided. Hoffman thrived on improvisation, on the spontaneous electricity of a scene. Redford sought truth through discipline, through rhythm and precision. "We're trying to tell a story," he once said, "not chase 1,000 moments." Their methods clashed, but neither yielded. The result was a masterpiece, though one born of exhaustion rather than harmony. When filming ended, they rarely spoke again. Years later, Hoffman would call him the quietest storm I ever worked with. Redford never replied. To him, the film was the conversation. Everything else was noise. It was another lesson. Sometimes greatness requires distance. Then came Tom Cruise, the Hollywood prince of another generation. When they joined forces for Lions for Lambs, Redford saw potential, but also a mirror reflecting how far cinema had drifted from its soul. Redford wanted truth, substance, a dialogue about war and conscience. Cruise wanted control, image, perfection. On set, their philosophies clashed again and again, until Redford finally asked, "Are we acting or selling a campaign ad?" It wasn't cruelty. It was clarity. Redford, the purist, longed for sincerity in a world that had traded emotion for marketing. Cruise respected him, but couldn't follow him down that path. The film underperformed, but for Redford it wasn't a failure. It was proof that even in decline, authenticity mattered more than applause. The story of Faye Dunaway introduced a different kind of tension, one born not of ego, but of passion. On 3 days of the Condor, their chemistry was magnetic, volatile, irresistible. Dunaway was electric, unpredictable, a storm in heels, as Redford described her. Every scene felt alive because of that friction. Yet behind the brilliance lay chaos. She lived inside her emotions, Redford said, and sometimes you'd get lost in them. Their creative clashes made the film unforgettable, but the cost was too high. When filming wrapped, Redford swore never to work with her again. Not out of anger, but out of self-preservation. Still, when asked decades later about her, he smiled softly and said, "She's unforgettable." There was no bitterness in his voice, only admiration for the woman who brought fire to his. Calm Robert Duvall represented yet another side of the struggle. Two masters of their craft locked in a duel over artistic truth. On the natural, their scenes together were electric, but their working relationship was tense. Duvall's approach was instinctive, untamed. Redford's was composed, methodical. Their on-set argument became Hollywood legend. "It's not your movie," Redford told him. Duvall shot back, "It's not anyone's until it's real." That line stayed with Redford for years. In that moment he saw the truth. Art isn't control or chaos, Anna. It's the fragile balance between them. They finished the film with respect, but never reunited on screen. Redford later called Duvall the purest actor I've ever known, and the hardest to stand beside. And then there was Paul Newman, the friendship that defined an era and quietly fell apart. Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid made them legends, and The Sting sealed their legacy. But as the years passed, the balance shifted. Newman became the face, Redford the shadow. There was no fight, no betrayal, only silence, the kind that hurts more than anger. When asked about it, Redford said softly, "Paul was the face and I was the footnote. It wasn't jealousy, it was loss." Their bond had been built on equality, and when fame tilted the scales, their friendship dissolved into memory. The timing wasn't right, he later said, a simple sentence carrying decades of unspoken regret. Through these encounters, a portrait emerges, not of conflict, but of quiet endurance. Redford was never the loudest voice, but always the most centered. He wasn't afraid of confrontation, but he preferred stillness over spectacle. In a world where ego often eclipses artistry, he remained the exception, the man who understood that sometimes silence is the loudest form of strength. His calm wasn't detachment, it was discipline. Every clash, every falling out, every lost friendship became part of his silent education, one that taught him that greatness isn't measured by the roles you play, but by the peace you preserve while playing them. Today, Robert Redford looks back not with bitterness but with clarity. He knows that his legacy isn't built on perfection, but on perseverance. Behind every calm expression was 1,000 unspoken battles. Behind every graceful silence, a decision to choose art over ego. And as he reflects on those who could not walk beside him, he understands that the price of integrity is often loneliness. Yet he wouldn't change a thing. Because in the end, the story of Robert Redford isn't about the stars he clashed with. It's about the man who, in a world addicted to noise, chose to speak only when it mattered, and in doing so, left behind a legacy of timeless grace and unshakable truth.